As citizens, we are entitled to equal rights. Who are we? We mean men, women, and transgender. In our society, people have a vague idea about who a transgender person is. Let us hear from various voices on what they feel about transgender.
A person who is born as what we would identify as a female or a male, but feeling inside the opposite gender.
हाँ, उनके बारे में थोड़ा बहुत जो मीडिया में आता है या फिर अगर फर्दर रिसोर्सेज से उनसे पता चलता है। मेरी इंडिपेंडेंटली एक मेरी चॉइस है कि मैं क्या हूँ या क्या नहीं हूँ, वो इंडिपेंडेंट है। हाँ, अगर यहाँ के सामाजिक रीति रिवाज के हिसाब से पूछें तो वो रॉन्ग डेफिनेशन में जाते हैं।
उनके बारे में ये है कि मैं उनको चलता फिरता देखता हूँ, वैसे तो कोई दोस्ती तो है नहीं मेरी। हाँ, लेकिन उनके बारे में ये पता लगता है कि ये वाकई में लड़की की तरह है, मैन, और लड़की भी कभी कभी अपने आप में पैंट शर्ट पहन के सोचती है कि मैं लड़का हूँ, मैं इतना पता उसका। हाँ, और फिर ये हिजड़ा के बारे में इसलिए पता है कि जब बच्चा पैदा होता है तो गाना बजाने आती है हमारे घर।
An individual who is interested in both male and female, I guess.
According to me, a transgender is someone who's in between, I really don't know how to explain it, but just one thing that they can't reproduce, that's it. I think that's natural and that's not up to them.
Confused? Let us demystify who transgender people are.
Transgender people may not associate with the body that they are born with. To associate with the gender that they associate with, they may go through a surgical procedures or they may not go through a surgical procedures. Some of the trans people actually may identify themselves with the binary gender like female or male, or they may not at all identify with the binary gender. They can identify themselves as a non-binary also. So for example, some trans people would identify themselves as just transgender people. Or some of them would identify themselves as different gender identities like hijras, like Mangalmukhi, Jokti, and other different identities which are part of the larger umbrella of transgender community, and they are a different transgender identity. We do not come in black and white, we come in various shades of grays. Transgender kids, especially when they are growing up and when they understand that they do not associate themselves with the gender that they want to be associated with, they may have a liking towards a different gender clothes. Like for example, a trans man may identify himself as a man and would like to wear a man clothes like shirt and pant. And at the same time, a trans woman who's identifying herself as a girl or a female would like to, wear saris, skirts, tops, or would like to have long nails and other characteristics that will help them to have a gender affirmation about the gender that they're trying to associate with.
A person who is born in a female body but from mind always feels like a male, who expresses oneself like a boy or a man through different ways like wearing male clothes, playing with toys, mostly associated with boys, also insists to be referred through male pronouns only. A person who is born in a male body but from mind always feels like a female, who expresses oneself like a girl or a woman through different ways like wearing female clothes, playing with toys, mostly associated with girls, who insists to be referred through female pronouns only. While we understand who a transgender person is, let us know some key concepts: sexual orientation, gender identity. Let us look at sexual orientation. Sexual orientation describes what gender or sex a person is physically, emotionally, romantically, and sexually attracted to. Sexual orientation can be different for each person, and you may not understand sexual orientation of a person by just looking at them or from their interests or hobbies. You can only know about a person's sexual orientation when they tell you. Let us understand more. Men or women who are attracted to their opposite gender or sex are heterosexual or straight. Men who are attracted to men are gay. Women who are attracted to women are called lesbians. People who are attracted to both men and women are called bisexual. Gender identity is the manner in which we behave or express our gender. It can be through a personal behavior, the way we look or the way we appear, and the way we express ourselves. Gender identity is the manner we feel about and express our gender, that is through clothing, behavior, and personal appearance. It is the inner sense or the feelings about one's gender. Such feelings may or may not match with the sex of the person, the way he is born with. So you are born a male or female, and when a gender is assigned to you at your birth, eventually it is matched with your inner feeling and expression of gender, and you may become a man or woman. But if a person who does not conform to his or her gender assigned at birth, he or she will be a transgender. Legal identity. Identity of every individual is very important, and such identification is further recognized through identity documents endorsed by the state or any other appropriate authorities. Identity documents helps an individual to access rights and entitlements. Identity is essential for representation of a person and also safeguard against fraud or mismatched identity. Since a transgender person's sex does not match with their gender, the identity documents do not match with their preferred gender. For this reason, a transgender person's right to identity is violated and also leads to several hurdles in accessing their rights. However, there are ways to change the identity documents. Certain documents are required for such change. Affidavit, advertisement in regional newspapers, Gazette publication. This is mandatory for government employees, but it is recommended to publish the change of your name or sex in Gazette, as it is authorized legal document of the government. Certificate from the doctor stating that sex reassignment surgery is completed. After the NALSA judgment, sex reassignment surgery is not a prerequisite for change in documents. 2 photographs. Let us look at documents where such change of name and sex is allowed. Passport, voter card, Aadhaar card, PAN card. In the identity cards like passport, Aadhaar card and voter card, apart from male and female, an individual who associate with non-binary gender can also opt to be identified as transgender. In such a case, the persons can apply for the identity documents as T category. Even though our fundamental rights guarantee us from any discrimination and harassment, transgender people face tremendous harassment and discrimination in different walks of their life. The major areas where the community face discrimination are in accessing health, public space, education, employment and housing. Health. For Hijras, it is very difficult to access healthcare facilities.
हमको ऐसा नजरिया पे देखते हैं, पहले ये लोग क्या है, वो जो हेल्थ केयर प्रोवाइडर्स के पास जाना ही हम लोग ने मतलब इंटरेस्ट नहीं आता है, जो इसकी वजह से जो सर्विसेज लेने में भी हमको बहुत सारा दिक्कत हो जाता है.
There are several incidents where they are denied treatment or have met with unwarranted behaviors from hospitals and clinics.
आज मेरा तबीयत खराब है करके मैंने एक हॉस्पिटल में गई थी, बट उस जगह पे मैंने ऐसी गई थी, मतलब मेरे को देखे कि तो कोई बोल सकता है कि मैं आदमी हूँ करके, बट उनको मेरे को देखने के बावजूद भी, मेरा नाम सत्यश्री करके बोलने के बावजूद भी वो लोग ने मेरा सेक्स आइडेंटिटी सेक्स कॉलम में मेरे को मेल लिखे दिया है. मैं ये सब देखा ना, उसके बाद मैंने वो डॉक्टर के पास भी नहीं गया, वो वापस आ गई.
Public spaces. Transgender people are humiliated and discriminated while accessing public places.
डिस्क्रिमिनेशन लगभग डेली लाइफ में रोज़ ही फेस होता है. जहाँ तक मैं डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को फील करती हूँ, साइलेंट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, फिजिकल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, जो मेरी ऑफिस और घर के बीच जर्नी रहती है, हर रोज़ होता है. मेरे लिए मेट्रो के सबसे कठिन 4 घंटे होते हैं. मेट्रो में अक्सर जनरल डिब्बे में अगर सफ़र करो तो बहुत फिजिकल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन, सेक्सुअल एडवांसेस डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होती हैं। और अपने आप को सेफ करने के लिए कई बार ऐसा भी हुआ है कि उन्हें लेडीज़ बोगी में भी सफ़र किया है जहाँ पे मैं फिजिकल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन से बच सकूँ। और ऐसा ही हुआ, फिजिकल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन तो बच गई, बट वहाँ साइलेंट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन और वर्बल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन वहाँ पे भी होती है।
We go to a public place for any eating out or even to a place or lounge, so the kind of looks people give us is not abide by, and I personally feel that it really hurts a transgender person.
But I was harassed by this individual who was trying to talk all the obnoxious things to me. That तुमने क्या खाया? What have you eaten? Your mouth is smelling. There's bad smell coming from your body. Stay away from my counter.
I have found out a very safe place for myself. It's called She's Jerome. It's in NALSA, the first LGBT cafe in India.
Housing. It is very unlikely that a transgender can access decent house in a city because of most of the times they are seen as excluded community.
मैं लास्ट 2 साल पहले एक मकान खरीदने गई थी बॉम्बे में, तो वहाँ पे मैंने टोकन भी दे दी, कुछ पैसे भी दे दी और फिर यानी मैंने चाबी भी ले ली फ्लैट की। उसके बाद उसका काम भी करना चालू करी, लेकिन वहाँ के जो लोग थे, जो वहाँ के रहवासी थे और भी बहुत सारे लोग थे वहाँ पे सोसाइटी में, तो उन्होंने ऑब्जेक्शन दिया कि ये सोसाइटी में किन्नर नहीं रह सकते।
अगर कोई ट्रांसजेंडर कम्युनिटी से, स्पेसिफिकली अगर वो हिजड़ा कम्युनिटी से है, क्योंकि वो लोग बहुत ज़्यादा विजिबल है कि, और वो लोग फ्लैट लेने जाते हैं रेंट पे, तो उनको जो लैंडलॉर्ड होता है वो मना कर देता है, क्योंकि उनको लगता है कि अगर वो हिजड़ा है तो यहाँ पे वो कुछ गलत काम करेंगे। मतलब वो एक स्टीरियोटाइप उनकी मेंटालिटी बन चुकी है। काफ़ी सारे ट्रांसमैन भी हैं ऐसे जो मतलब अपने में ट्रांजिशन में होते हैं, विजिबली वो मेल है और डॉक्यूमेंट्स फीमेल में है, तो उनको फ्लैट रेंट पे नहीं देते, क्योंकि उनको लगता है कि ये कोई फ्रॉड इंसान है, क्योंकि ट्रांजिशन में पूरा लुक चेंज हो जाता है। अभी उसका बियर्ड आ जाएगी, पूरा बॉडी स्ट्रक्चर एकदम मैनली है, लेकिन डॉक्यूमेंट में फीमेल है तो उसको फ्लैट नहीं मिलेगा।
Employment. Every citizen has a right to practice trade, occupation, business, or take up employment for their choice. Unfortunately, transgender persons have limited access to these rights, and they are mostly denied or compelled to leave their jobs in spite of being capable and qualified for a profession.
ऑफिस में जब मैं ओपनली सोसाइटी के सामने एज अ ट्रांसजेंडर आई, जब मैंने अनाउंस किया, तब मैं बेंगलोर में एक सॉफ्टवेयर कंपनी में ईडी के पोस्ट पे काम कर रही थी। उस पोस्ट में मुझे एचआर और डायरेक्टर्स की तरफ से मॉरल सपोर्ट मिली, मगर मेंटली सपोर्ट नहीं मिली। डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ऑफिस में एज अ जेंडर डिस्क्रिमिनेशन शुरू हुई। 2 महीने तक मैंने बहुत अपने आप को संभाला, स्टाफ के साथ मिक्सअप होने की कोशिश की, बट एंड ऑफ द डे मुझे 2 महीने बाद फोर्सिबली रिज़ाइन देना पड़ा।
The society not only looks down upon the transgender people who are working at the workplace. Apart from that, I think a lot of bullying and sexual harassment takes place, which has happened to one certain friend of mine as well, where she was sexually harassed by the boss of the company, which she couldn't take up the matter because there was no safeguarding of laws for her.
Education. For every citizen, access to education is important. But for transgender children, such access is challenging.
जो ट्रांस किड है वो लोग अपने उस यूनिफॉर्म में कंफर्टेबल फील नहीं करते। जैसे एक लड़का है, अगर वो अपने आप उसका जेंडर लड़की का है तो वो कंफर्टेबल फील नहीं करेगा शॉर्ट्स पहनने में, और वो उसको स्कर्ट पहनना दिया नहीं जाएगा, उसको अलाउ नहीं है वो पहनना। उसका जो प्रोनाउंसिएशन है वो अलग होगा, उसको लड़कियों की तरह बात करना पसंद होगा। और कोई अगर फीमेल टू मेल ट्रांस किड है, उसका प्रोनाउंसिएशन मेल की तरह होगा, बाकी दूसरे बच्चों की तरह नहीं है। तो जो बाकी बच्चे होते हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा बुली करते हैं और अलग अलग कमेंट पास करेंगे। मतलब स्कूल से ही स्टार्ट कर देते हैं कि मतलब कि तू तो छक्का है, तू गे है। ट्रांस किड स्कूल और कॉलेजेस में सबसे बड़ा जो इशू उनके लिए होता है वो टॉयलेट का होता है, क्योंकि आप पूरे दिन अपने आप को रोक नहीं सकते और आपको टॉयलेट यूज़ करना ही पड़ेगा। अगर आप मेल टू फीमेल हो तो आप फीमेल वॉशरूम में आपको अलाउ नहीं करेंगे, और मेल में आपको जाने के बाद 90% चांसेस है कि आपको वहाँ पे सेक्सुअली अब्यूज़ हो सकते हो। कोई अगर ट्रांस मैन है और वो लड़कों की तरह दिख रहा है, तो फीमेल टॉयलेट में अगर वो जाता है तो उसको लड़कियां वहाँ पे मतलब इतना शोर मचा के उसको वहाँ से निकाल देगी। तो अगर स्कूल में स्टूडेंट और टीचर्स को सेंसिटाइज़ किया जाए ट्रांसजेंडर्स के बारे में, तो ट्रांसजेंडर किड्स के लिए काफ़ी हेल्दी एटमॉस्फेयर क्रिएट किया जा सकता है। आप अगर अलग हो, आप बाकी स्टूडेंट से थोड़ा भी अलग हो और आपको बुली करते हैं और आप कंप्लेन करने जाते हो टीचर के पास, तो टीचर बोलती है कि ये तुम्हारी गलती है कि तुम अपने आप को सुधारो।
We saw the different kinds of discrimination faced by transgender people, and in the next segment we will learn how such discrimination violates fundamental rights. Fundamental rights. In this segment, we learn about fundamental rights, which protect us from discrimination and upholds our dignity and safety. In Part 3 of the Constitution, fundamental rights are enshrined. Fundamental rights are unique rights which are guaranteed to all citizens of the country. However, right to equality and right to life and personal liberty is also guaranteed to non-citizens like foreigners and anyone residing in India. Let us understand our fundamental rights. Article 14. Article 14 ensures equality before law. Everyone is equal in the eyes of law. The right to equality means that people will not be treated differently by the state or on the basis of external factors like physical appearance, name, gender, religion, caste, wealth, etc. So when a person commits an offense, whether rich or poor, must be punished under the law in the same manner for same offense. However, unequal cannot be treated equally, as, if done so, then equality can never be achieved. Thereby, Article 14 also guarantees equal protection of law. Article 15 further prohibits discrimination based on sex, caste, religion, place of birth. Further, the law also states that no one can be discriminated in accessing public place like bathing, ghats, wells, shops, restaurants, cinema halls, etc. As the unequals cannot be treated equally and must be protected, special laws can be made for women, children, people belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes under Clause 3 and 4 of Article 15. Under Article 19, a person is guaranteed right to freedom, especially in speech and expression, forming a peaceful assembly, an association or union, moving freely around the country, residing anywhere in the country, practice any trade or profession. However, such rights are not absolute. State may impose restrictions on such freedoms on grounds of security of state, friendly relations with foreign state, decency and morality, defamation, incitement of an offense, etc. Article 21 is a vital fundamental right, and it protects our right to life, which includes right to live with dignity, food, water, healthcare facilities, safe environment, decent housing, shelter, employment. Under Article 21A, every child between 6 to 14 years must be provided free and compulsory education. Such education must necessarily be free from harassment and discrimination under the Right to Education Act 2009. There are several other laws which protect citizens from discrimination, harassment, and injustices apart from our fundamental rights. The Supreme Court and High Court have laid down a plethora of judgments to protect our rights, which are also considered to be law of the land. One of such landmark decisions was laid down by the Supreme Court in National Legal Services Authority versus Union of India and others on 15th April 2014.
In 2014, the National Legal Services Authority filed a public interest litigation in the Supreme Court regarding the issues of the transgender community. Thereafter, several civil society organizations also pleaded in that case to substantiate the issue with the relevant documents. If you look at the Indian Constitution, it is explained, that is to say that the rights are guaranteed to all the person. So it doesn't specify whether it's male or female. So after this judgment, after this landmark judgment, the Supreme Court has recognized a transgender person as an equal citizen of the country, and if that is interpreted, that they are they can equally enjoy all the rights guaranteed under the Constitution.
The key highlights of the judgment are: all persons have a right to choose their gender, and such right is guaranteed as right to freedom under Article 19. Recognition of non-binary gender or transgender apart from male and female based on self-identification. Reservation in education and employment as other backward classes for transgender. Discrimination and harassment-free access to health and separate toilets in hospitals. Free sex reassignment surgery.
This judgment recognizes an individual's choice to choose his or her gender, and so a person can choose to be male, female, or a transgender, that is a non-binary gender, and such choice may be different from the sex assigned at birth. So thereby a person who is born as male, born with a male sexual organ, but identifies as a female, must be recognized as female, and such person can also make necessary changes in his documents to be recognized as female. And such change of documents does not necessarily need a medical intervention. A person does not need to go through a medical intervention or a sex reassignment surgery to change his documents.
There have been some remarkable developments after this judgment, such as column for transgender for opening bank accounts, column for transgender in railway reservation form, transgender children notified as disadvantaged children under Right to Education Act, inclusion of transgender persons in admission forms of college and university, and also for accessing scholarships under University Grants Commission. So let us understand the rights violated in the cases of discrimination faced by transgender people. When a hijra faces maltreatment while accessing healthcare facilities, it is a violation of right to equality under Article 14 and right to life and personal liberty under Article 21. If a trans woman or a hijra is harassed and ridiculed in her office and compelled to leave her job, it is again a violation under Article 21. When a transgender child or a gender non-conforming child is unable to access toilet in the school or bullied and harassed by fellow students, right to equality is infringed, and also their right to education under Article 21A is violated. Or when they are not allowed to wear the uniform of their choice, it is against their right to expression as guaranteed under Article 19, as laid down in the NALSA judgment. When a transgender person is denied a place to reside, it is a violation of right to freedom as guaranteed under Article 19, and also right to shelter as stated under Article 21. Fundamental rights have come from Part 3 of the Constitution. So what can we do if they are violated? There are two things we can do. Approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution, or approach a High Court under Article 226 of the Constitution. But which High Court? There are, after all, many High Courts across India. So we have to choose. If you decide to approach a High Court, it should be one where the cause of action arose, which is a fancy way of saying where the problem occurred or where your right was violated. You can also file the case in the High Court under which the respondent, that is the party against whom you are filing the case, is based. And by the way, Article 32, under which we approach the Supreme Court, is in itself a fundamental right. So we have a fundamental right to enforce our fundamental rights.
The Supreme Court and the High Courts in India, they have the power to issue what are called prerogative writs, or more simply writs. When we approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 or a High Court under Article 226, we are actually asking these courts to issue writs to protect our fundamental rights. And these cases are called writ petitions.
A writ is a special kind of order that High Courts or the Supreme Court can pass to enforce fundamental rights.
When we approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 or a High Court under Article 226, we are asking these courts to issue writs to protect our fundamental rights.
Now, there are many types of writs: habeas corpus, quo warranto, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition.
Perhaps the most frequently issued writ is that of mandamus. So let's look at that more closely.
Mandamus is an order to a lower court or tribunal or public authority to perform a public or statutory duty. This writ is issued by the Supreme Court or High Court when any government, court, corporation or any public authority has to do a public duty but fails to do so.
So if we look at the rights violations we saw in segment 2, we see that in most cases, a transgender person's fundamental rights were violated because some authority had failed to do its duty.
So, when a hijra faces discrimination when accessing treatment in a hospital, or a gender non-conforming child is bullied in school, and the authorities fail to protect the child, there are instances where someone's fundamental right is violated.
In these cases, a writ of mandamus would have helped to secure justice because mandamus would compel the authorities to do their duty. A writ can also lie against a private party if the private party is discharging a public function.
Private bodies exercise public functions when they intervene or participate in a social or economic affair in the public interest. So a private body is performing a public function when it provides public goods or other collective services such as healthcare, education, and personal social services from funds raised by taxation.
So we can approach the High Court under Article 226 and the Supreme Court under Article 32. Now, although the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, the scope of Article 226 by which we approach a High Court is actually broader than that of 32, because we can approach the High Court for violation of fundamental rights as well as for violation of any other rights. But we can only approach the Supreme Court under Article 32 for violation of fundamental rights. So in many ways it is better to approach the High Court.
So who can file a writ petition? The main factor here is something called locus standi, which literally means a place of standing or basically the right to approach the court. So that means the person or a group whose rights are violated. A public interest litigation, or a PIL for short, is an exception of this rule. Here, the persons directly affected need not file the case. Anyone else, even the court itself, can do so on their behalf. Public interest litigation is litigation for the protection of public interest. And cases involving child rights, women's rights, environmental issues, rights of people with disabilities, and of course, rights of transgender people easily come within the term public interest. These are some formats one can follow for filing writ petitions.
Sometimes the courts have also accepted a simple letter as a petition, because in writ cases, what's important is the substance and not the form. There is also no time limit for filing a writ petition, but one shouldn't delay matters unnecessarily. One can also approach the legal services authorities, which provide free legal aid to certain categories of people.
The Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 has established legal services authorities at the national, state, district and sub-district level. They provide free legal aid to vulnerable groups such as women, children, people with disabilities, industrial workers, victims of trafficking, victims of man-made or natural disasters, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, economically backward people, etc. Different states have different categories for income limit to define an economically backward person. This can be checked from their websites. The addresses can also be obtained from here.
So if the court allows your case, that is, it passes orders that you wanted, then it is left to the respondents, that is the other side, to do what the court has directed them to do. In most cases, the respondents are present through their lawyers, so you don't have to take any special steps. But if an order is passed ex parte, that is, the other side was not present, then you should send certified copies of the court's order to them so that they know what they are required to do. And if the respondents ignore the court's orders, then they can be held in contempt of court.
If your writ petition in the High Court is dealt with by a single judge and you are not happy with the decision, you can file a writ appeal in the same court. If your writ petition is disposed of by a division bench, that is by 2 judges, or you are not happy with the writ appeal, you can only approach the Supreme Court in a special leave petition. If your petition is dismissed in the Supreme Court, there is pretty much nothing you can do, except a review petition or a curative petition, which are very technical indeed.